Welcome back to Proper Madness. I am happy to have you back if you're a returning listener. If you're a new listener, my name is Sabby, and I have a very unique perspective on mental health. I believe wholeheartedly that we can turn anything that we have been through and alchemize it into bettering ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. It helps you feel less alone, to know and understand that the way out is always through the eye of the storm. Grab a cup of tea. If you're not a tea drinker, grab your coffee, and let's sit down and tune into ourselves so that we can learn to connect to other people. We never know the weight of our words and how they might help someone. Hello. You may not believe this. In fact, there is tea. Can you see that on camera? You can. I do, in fact, drink tea every time I record. Mostly because it's in the afternoon and it is tea time in the afternoon in England. So, and you're probably wondering, okay, well, why don't you have an accent? If you were born yesterday, you can tell I do have some type of an accent. So I spent some time in the UK growing up, just so you know. That's why tea time is a thing. And tea time, really quick before we dive into the podcast, tea time for me, what it represents is like this pause that we have in the afternoon to just sit and have a cup of tea and be in our own energy or connect to someone else. Because when you're having tea or you're drinking tea, especially in Europe and England, you're having a cuppa, with someone else, talking to them, getting to know them, or deepening an existing relationship. And so for me, that's what tea time represents. Now, obviously, my podcast is not called Tea Time with Savvy. It should have been. It's too late to do a rebrand, isn't it? We've already stuck onto Proper Madness, but it's fitting because it's also a very British motif. Okay. Yes, if you're watching this on YouTube, I have a band-aid on my pinky finger before you say something about it. It's a very long story. All I can say is, girls, ladies, if you wear press-ons like I do, because honestly, I love wearing press-on nails. I don't go get my nails done all the time. Like sometimes I just want to chuck on some press-ons. They stay for 3 weeks if you do it properly, let me tell you. However, if you use too much glue, you know what happens? And you try to force a nail off, I think you can put 2 and 2 together by looking at that band-aid. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip of my tea. Oh my god. Oh my god, splendid. As you can see from the title, which I'm sure you probably have a lot of questions. You're like, what does this mean? The key to your self-confidence is through your shadow. Now, I'm not talking about Peter Pan, looking at your shadow. But if you want to get super deep here super quickly, the shadow parts of ourselves are the parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of, the parts of ourselves that we have shoved away, the parts that people have told us are wrong, are bad, are no good, that we deem to be dark. I'm sure all around the internet you've heard something called shadow work. You've heard about people doing work on themselves through the shadows. I'm sure you've heard me mention this word a few times, probably in the past year or so on and off, because transparently, sometimes the things that I share on social media, it does feel like it's not me, like it's some sort of divinely guided message that someone probably needs to hear. Shadow work to me is making peace with the parts of ourselves that we deem as dark, that we deem as bad or shameful. And this can show up in so many different ways. The ways that it has shown up with me personally is, if you don't know a lot about my story, there are many podcasts that I have been on where I've told parts of my story and my traumas. So you are welcome to Google my name, and they will all come up. But the shadows for me were always the parts of me that I felt like I needed to hide away because society, certain relationships in my life, or me, my own narratives, told me that there was something wrong with them. Now, I've always had a knack for the dark side. I've always had like a bit of a spooky nature, a bit more mysterious. Someone literally the other day called me a black cat, and I went, "Am I?" They went, "Well, like if you were to look at a black cat and then you look at you, you'd be more of a panther." I go, "Thank you so much." Thank you so much. You know, I got that tall person energy. I'm only on one dating site, whatever you want to call it. It's the one for, famous people or whatever. And literally my tagline is 5'1", but my personality is 5'6", because that's how I feel. I digress. Since I've always had a knack for the darker parts of life, of myself, of situations, of people. It's because I think when you go through a lot of dark things in life, a lot of trauma, a lot of situations that put you in emotions that make you feel low, make you feel worthless, make you feel useless, those shadow parts of ourselves, which is what endured that darkness, and sometimes even almost this character we become to cope with what we've been through, are what I like to call my shadow parts. That's one part of it. The second part of it, the shadow parts, are what society or your childhood or a situation or a person or a bully always told you was wrong with you, and therefore your brain kind of automatically categorized that as, oh, that's a bad part of me that I can't let people see. And sometimes these shadow parts of ourselves don't always look stereotypically bad. They don't always look like something that you think is, dark and stormy. For me, a shadow part of myself was being too nice and people pleasing and very codependent. So that's not something to be scared of. That's not something that is scary and, whatever. No. But it's a darker side of me that I did not like, that I always felt was bad or shameful. In fact, to this day, if someone calls me sweet for some reason, my body like convulses. It's like, no, because I had a knack for being too nice after for quite a long time in my life. I was not a nice person. I was selfish. I didn't think about anyone else but me. And I never thought about the consequences behind the actions that I was taking or the words that I was saying. I was a compulsive liar. I never knew, really truly knew myself, and therefore I never showed up as myself. And I hurt a lot of people with some of my very avoidant attachment tendencies, like love back then. I mean, back in my 20s, like early 20s, teenage years, when I was an addict, when I experienced assault, and when I experienced a lot of loss, like death, a lot of death. Um, and I was in a relationship that just, I don't even know if I can call it a relationship, but I was like head over heels in love with someone who was never going to choose me and who cheated on me all the time. And so that part of my life was a part of my life that I shoved down so deep, and I always felt like, well, I'm a selfish piece of crap and no one loves me, and I always keep disappointing people, and I never show up for the people that matter to me. Like, I would make promises to the people in my life and I'd never keep it because I just want to tell them yes because I want to feel good in the moment, but really truly when it came to actually following through, I never did. Why? Because I was so hell bent on like the next fix I was gonna get. I was so hell bent on all the pain that I was experiencing that I would have much rather partied my ass off somewhere or, you know, been looking for love or friendships or doing other things to escape my pain than really show up for the relationships in my life. And then on top of that, like if I ever exhibited any behavior that like if I ever, like, messed up, if I ever did anything bad, I always made some sort of crazy excuse and lied about it back then, so that was because, though, I didn't wanna take accountability for anything because I was so scared to do that. So for me, the shadow part of myself, not only was that selfish part, not only was that part of me that, like, disappointed so many people and was selfish, I made being selfish something bad, but only because the way that I was doing it was bad. Like, it was not okay. I lost a lot of people in my life at that. I was very lonely and I was surrounded by a lot of surface level human beings. So I did a whole like 180 after that point, and I became bloody Mother Teresa. I became too nice. I became too accommodating. I became a pushover. I let people say or do anything to me because I was so scared to be a bad person because I always felt like if I was selfish, where I stuck up for myself, where I said something that I was gonna say something to really hurt someone, so I was always very scared of speaking my truth or standing up for myself or being, quote, "selfish." So I had these 2 shadow parts of myself that were always competing. Our deepest shames and our deepest desires that people always told us were bad, that people always and that we always cultivated as shadow parts of ourselves, we've kind of shoved them so deep, but we don't realize those are valid parts of ourselves that really they are allowed to exist. They are allowed to be here. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with this. Now, in my time in my life when I was too sweet, too accommodating, too nice, and a pushover, I was in a very, 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 very abusive relationship emotionally with someone who was an alcoholic. So, when I was in that relationship and I was being told how useless I was 24/7, and I was being screamed at 24/7, and when I a lot of people don't know this, but I have a dog bite on my left forearm, from my own dog. That's my own bloody mistake. Oh my gosh. A story for a different day. But when that dog bite happened, I literally could not use my left arm. I lost feeling in the left part of my arm, and that person didn't show up for me, and instead of standing up for myself and telling him like, "Hey, go take a hike, dude," um, I instead was too understanding and too nice. I made excuses for this person. I was a pushover. Even though I was being hurt, I never spoke up. Obviously, it's not completely my fault, but I always take ownership from the mistakes that I have made. I have no problem holding myself accountable for what I do. So then when I was too sweet, it's interesting. Like I always had these I always had these very dual sides of myself that would come out where I would just be extremely selfish and cut people off or extremely accommodating and give people a million chances because I really wanted to be empathetic. And so eventually I made peace with those 2 sides of myself, and I honored the fact that, you know what? I showed up as both of those versions of myself when I needed to help myself get through whatever I need to get through at that moment in time. And there can be a lot of shame and self-blame and heavier energies that go into those things. And I remember, you know, like my whole life always being scared of my goth and edgier side because I grew up having like a goth, a bit like of a darker aesthetic. And my family always, because I mean, your family's your family. They grow up a certain way. They see like goth things and they get worried. They're like, whoa, we want you to be happy. But they didn't, I think what they didn't understand, and this is not their fault at all, it's just a cultural thing. What they didn't understand was like that was just me expressing myself and being myself and kind of wanting to embrace the darker sides of myself because these darker elements were my protectors. Having like the darker goth edgier side of like, oh, I'm a bad bee and like no one mess with me was a way for me to protect myself from the people who were hurting me and from the people who were abusing me. So like and they don't know that, right? They didn't know that. But I almost kind of became a character. But that character served me well for a little bit because it made me fierce, it made me strong, it made me kinda step into my own power a little bit. But then again, like, when people keep telling you one thing over and over and over again in your life, and they're like, "This is bad, that's wrong, this is weird," it's like it kinda compounds in your subconscious, and you start to believe that that's true. You start to believe that your self-expression and who you are is wrong or bad. And so I shoved that part with the literal dark side of me, I shoved that away. And what tends to happen, and those are just a few of my shadows, if you will. We have different kinds. So, we have many. But those are the prominent 3 for me. And so when I shoved those away, what happened was they started trying to come back in little ways that I was not fully aware of, like self-sabotage, maybe trying to protect me again, maybe trying to speak up or say something and like, come out because they feel so suppressed. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We have something to say. Those darker parts of yourself have something to say, and we ignore it. We ignore it because people think it's bad. We ignore it because we're scared of what people are going to think. We ignore it because we think, okay, well, if they come back, I'm going to hurt someone, or I'm going to get hurt, or people are going to think I'm weird and they're going to judge me. When really, truly, the truth to you stepping into your confidence is befriending your shadows, is allowing your shadows to be fully integrated into who you are. The light and the dark have to exist with each other. They exist simultaneously in different parts of our life, but we're always wanting to pick and choose. We're always thinking, well, if I'm going to be dark, I can't be light. Well, if I'm going to be light, it can't be dark. No, you need both. You need both. People talk about your highest self all the time. The highest self seems to be this almost pedestalized version of you that is perfect and all-knowing. I don't think your highest self is perfect. I don't think your highest self is always going to know what's best all the time, 24/7. I think your highest self is the more evolved version of you that's in alignment, that knows how to integrate both your shadows and your light. And if that's just gone over your head, let me break this down for you. Your highest self is the version of you that you can be if you decide it to be. Your highest self is your intuition embodied. It's not separate from you. It's your soul. It's where your soul comes from. If you believe in past lives or whatever you want to believe in, that is part of you, and it's your job to step into it and to own it. But here's the thing, for you to step into it and for you to own it, you have to really embody it. It's kind of like acclimating a fish to a tank. You take a little, little baby goldfish, you take the little baby goldfish, like, hey, baby goldfish, I picked you up from the store. Here's this new tank. This is your new home. That little baby goldfish is your higher self that you need to be at home with yourself. Just roll with me on this analogy, okay? Now, when you take the baby goldfish and you put it in the tank, you can't just let it bloody roam free, can you? No, two different temperatures right now, right? It needs to acclimate to its environment, and the temperature of that fish's, whatever water it's currently in needs to acclimate to that water before you can release it. When you step into your highest self and when you embody your shadows and you embody your light and you allow both to exist simultaneously, you're gonna need some time to acclimate because you're gonna still get triggered. You're still gonna have moments where you're not showing up as your best self. For me, I'm like, I know I still have moments where I'm a little bit more performative and I'm not completely embodied, or my ego likes to take control. Here's the other part of it. Now, walk with me down this. Your ego and your highest self is the same as the light and the dark. They need to coexist. If you tried to completely kill off your ego entirely, you're doing yourself a disservice because your ego is going to tell you and highlight to you what you need, what you need to heal, who you are. If you've never watched the show The OA, I highly recommend you watch it, especially the second season. Because there's this beautiful moment, and I don't want to ruin the show, but there's this beautiful moment the character embodies two different sides of herself to come into who she is. And all this past knowledge that we've been given, maybe from past lives, maybe from our intuition, maybe from whatever, is that identity of your highest self. And that highest self and your ego need to also be friends. You cannot pick and choose. I've met people who are apparently totally embodied in their highest self and they no longer have an ego. And I kind of look at it and I'm like, so you mean you're just in your ego? You mean you've totally killed off your ego, so you're just in your ego? No. Those are the spiritual people that think that they're like all knowing just because they did ayahuasca in a forest for 2 seconds and then they've come back and they went, "Oh yeah, my ego's dead, so I'm free." No. No, no, no. No, 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 no. The ego is to be integrated. The ego is to teach you because as human beings on this planet, we are here to learn and to grow. We're never going to always have it figured out. So if you think you're always going to have it figured out, wow, Jiminy Christmas, your ego is, you need to figure that one out. I can't do that for you. Sip of tea because we're getting deep here. So, how do you become confident in yourself while integrating all of these aspects of you, right? You're probably wondering, like, my goodness, that sounds like a lot of work. Do I need to do a ton of plant medicine to figure that out and do therapy? No. No. No, you don't. You just need to make peace with the parts of yourself that you're ashamed of. You need to make peace with the parts of yourself that people always taught you were wrong or bad or dorky or nerdy or not enough or too much. You make peace with that by trying to show up as that every day, even when it's really hard. Even when you're scared you're going to be ridiculed, even when you're scared that people aren't going to accept you, even when you're scared that you might be judged, you still show up. You show up fiercely as you, willing to be seen, no matter what anyone else thinks. That is how you embody the shadow aspects of yourself, is you put it in practice. Make peace with them, talk to them. Stop shoving them away. Stop thinking that they're sinful. Stop thinking that there's something wrong with them or that they're bad. If you don't know who Mary Magdalene is, do a little research. There's something that she says in her work. It's there's no such thing as sin. That's probably going to piss off a lot of very, very religious people, but who cares? Go look that up. Because the things that we within ourselves deem now, I'm not saying there's no such thing as bad things, okay? Relax. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as evil people. No. I'm saying within ourselves, sometimes we label things as sinful or bad or terrible. You'll see this kind of like, if you've ever noticed that there are people who are extremely controlled, almost like they're very scared to show up as themselves. They're very reserved. They almost kind of control every little thing that they do because they're scared. They're fearful of the shadow parts of themselves coming out to scare someone, to push them away, to be too much, whatever. So for that to become integrated, you need to allow them to pop through. But when they pop through, don't let them take control. Ask them some questions, right? An example would be like when I notice I'm being too nice or too accommodating or too empathetic, I don't shame myself for feeling that way. I ask that feeling a question, and that can look however you want it to look. Journal, look in the mirror and talk to yourself. Send yourself a voice memo. I don't care. You have your own method. For me, it's Literally just sitting with myself and talking to myself, but getting quiet and still enough to hear what I have to say. And the answer always comes from the heart, never the head. And so I will ask myself, okay, hey, why are you feeling like being too nice right now? What's going on? What do you feel like is going to happen if you're not nice? And you start to understand the parts of yourselves that you're so scared of. You have no choice but to allow the shadow parts of yourself to come to the surface to speak. Because sometimes the shadow parts of yourself will scream out in ways that you can't control because you've been suppressing them for so long. Case in point, for me, being too selfish, being too self-absorbed, only thinking about myself. If I'm people pleasing all the time, or if I'm saying yes to things I don't want to say yes to, if I know a situation's not good for me, but I'm trying to see it through anyways, well, that shadow part of myself that I keep ignoring is going to pop right through and do something silly and just yell and scream out in a way through some sort of behavior that I'm not saying to make me pay attention. So if you want to feel fully confident in yourself, the parts of yourself that you are afraid of need to be met with unconditional love and reverence, and they need to be a part of you that you can fully accept and know that, hey, you know what? Those parts of myself are allowed to exist. They are. I'm allowed to be selfish sometimes. I'm allowed to be kind and empathetic and sweet sometimes. I'm allowed to be a little dark and edgy. Like that. Allow them to exist, because if you keep suppressing them and you keep trying to give them a narrative that is not true, that's just based off of pain and shame that you associated with it, well, they're gonna keep thinking that there's something wrong with them, so then they're gonna keep acting out like a kid would. And a sip of tea to let you process all the things I just said. Because truthfully, the way that I became the most confident version of myself now has layers to it, right? I'd say the most important part was making peace with my shadow self so that it's fully integrated with all the parts of myself that I always felt ashamed of, and allowing them to just exist. Obviously, to exist healthily, right? And allowing my desires to be heard and met and seen with how I live my life. Because shadow parts can look different for everyone. There was something someone said to me, oh my gosh, a week ago, and I remember having like a thought about it and going, huh, I wonder why you're not, I wonder why you're not pursuing that. It was something to do with there was someone who had the desire to be, what was it? Oh, she said she has this desire, she has this desire to be told what to do. And I giggled because I was like, huh, I wonder why you're not following that desire. And she's married. And I was like, huh, I wonder why you're not communicating to your partner, like, hey, I want you to tell me what to do sometimes. Obviously, in a respectful way. But she probably feels like there's something wrong with asking for her needs to be met. And so that would be considered a shadow part of yourself too, right? So it's not always like these big personality things. It can be smaller things like that. So find the ways to, well, hang on, I need more tea in my body. If you're listening to this, you're hearing me pour tea and it sounds like something weird, don't be weird, okay? I'm literally pouring tea because, yes. Okay, a little bit of ASMR for you. Okay. Um, yeah, a lot of people have been asking me how I've become so confident. One, yes, in dealing with my shadow parts. Two, I'm very careful with who I surround myself with now. I no longer surround myself with people who are deeply, deeply, deeply insecure and need attention all the time. I no longer am close with people who need hand holding emotionally all the time because that's not my job. I'm no longer close with people who tried to tear me down. I'm no longer close with people who tried to dim my shine. And I'm no longer close with people who make me doubt myself and doubt my intuition. And then the third reason is I'm showing up for myself every single day and I'm keeping promises to myself that I'm telling myself I'm going to make. When you make a promise to yourself and you don't follow through on it, that's you not that cultivates a lack of self-trust. And when you have a lack of self-trust, you have a lack of confidence. The fourth is unwavering self-belief that's friggin' delusional. Sometimes we think that we don't deserve to believe in ourselves if we've had a past where we showed up as a person we didn't like. That's a bunch of BS. If you've put in the work on yourself and you're changing every day and you're making the active decision to hold yourself accountable, to make changes, to be consistent on those changes, and to continue to work on yourself, you more than deserve to believe in yourself regardless. Especially if you've had a past that made you think and believe that you are worthless. You deserve to believe in yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. It's not their job to. They should believe in you, but it's not their job to be your source of belief. You need to be the source of self-belief within yourself. And the people around you need to just be a beautiful extension of that, but also equally hold you accountable. I've always appreciated any friendship that ended or any dynamic that ended or anything that didn't work out for me, but that I was also held accountable because it highlighted to me where I needed to grow, whether or not they were right. It highlighted to me where I needed to grow and where I needed to evolve. And we can get scared of that. We can get scared of surrounding ourselves with people who are on our level because it makes us feel like, oh, am I less? No, no, no. Stop doubting yourself. Stop thinking that you need to be someone to be loved. Stop thinking that the parts of yourself that you used to be are bad. They're not. They were just there to help you during a difficult time. And you've forgiven yourself. That's the other very, very important part. Self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness isn't just as simple as writing a letter. It's checking in with yourself in the moments where you know you've done something to hurt someone and you go, you know what? I take accountability. I didn't do what I needed to do. I apologize to that person and I forgive myself, and you just move forward from it. Don't slip back into the spiral of I should have known better. Don't slip back into that dark spiral of there's something wrong with me, I'm broken. There's nothing wrong with you and you're not broken, you're a human being. All that matters is that you tried to change and you tried to move forward. So have grace and compassion for yourself. That is today's episode. If you would like me to dive deeper into this, please DM me or comment below, and tell me what is the shadow part of yourself that you are ashamed of, and how can I help you move through that? Maybe I'll make a podcast on that because I'm sure we all share like similar shadow parts, and if I can be that guiding light for you and I can help you realize like, hey, look at look at the mess of a human I used to be. Hello, I did it. It's not easy. It's not by any means, I'm not telling you it's an overnight thing. This has probably been the last, like, I want to say since February. Since February, you know, since February, I've just really done real work on myself, and it hasn't always looked pretty. There's been moments where, like, yeah, I still get depressed from time to time. Of course I do. I struggled with that my entire life. And I still have the dark thoughts every once in a while, but they're a lot less. They're a lot less because I'm forgiving myself and I'm I'm keeping my energy as sacred. And I think that maybe the final part that I just thought of now is following your purpose and allowing yourself to follow your purpose. Because when you follow your purpose, you're excited about something and you're just showing up. Kind of have like horse blinders on. You're not really caring what anyone is thinking of you. You're just going. So when you do the things that really truly make you happy, not what society tells you to do or your parents or your childhood or whoever, that's also when you start to embody a bit more confidence too because you're living a life that you love. Okay. I will leave you there with this. There's nothing wrong with the parts of yourself that you've neglected. You just need to say hi to them. Otherwise, they're gonna say hi to you and it's not gonna be a polite hello. I love you. I believe in you. Have a good day. Everything's gonna be okay. I know it rhymed. It's cringy to me too, but hey. I encourage you to follow, like, subscribe, and rate this so that it pushes it out to whoever else might need it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you ever want to chat more about anything that this podcast is about, you know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and good old TikTok. And be sure to stay tuned for my Tea Time with Sabby episodes.